And now we can go ahead and actually kick things off. I have my usual bit of housekeeping that I like to cover before we get into the heart of the presentation. First and foremost, this session is being recorded. So if you have to walk away for whatever reason, somebody knocks on your door, or some sort of emergency happens, which we know is happening all the time in IT, rest assured knowing that you are going to get an email sent out sometime tomorrow that has a link to the recording, and then any links or resources that we talk about today, those will be in the YouTube description of that link. So be aware that you'll have everything we talk about today in a nice, easy to find spot. And if you are not getting the emails for the recording for whatever reason, email me. You probably got an email from me to register and get the link for this event. So jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. If you are not getting these recordings, we definitely want to make sure that you do. Secondly, as we go through everything, please use the Q&A section of Zoom for any questions that you would like me to answer. Much easier for me to keep track of that. In the Q&A section, I am going to do my level best to ignore chat because it is distracting sometimes. And I'm going to stay laser focused on the Q&A this session. So please, if you have anything you'd like me to address, use that Q&A box. And then finally, we do have a giveaway that we will announce at the very end of the webinar, so stick around for that. We have what I'm sure is a very good prize, although given that this is a macOS webinar, it would be extremely funny if the prize was a Windows laptop. I have no actual insight into what the prize is. That's just me wish casting. With that, we can officially go ahead and get things started. We are talking about managing devices on NinjaOne, specifically Mac OS devices. This is something that is near and dear to my own heart. I recently had my 5-year anniversary at NinjaOne just a couple weeks ago, and it took me down memory lane and reminded me that the very first customer call that I ever did at NinjaOne was on Mac OS, with somebody who wasn't using any Windows devices. They were entirely Mac OS. And in reviewing for this presentation, I looked at all the features and thought just how far we've come in those 5 years, how many new features have been added. And one of the features that is absolutely key for successful macOS management that we've launched just a few months ago is MDM. Now, we've had an agent for a really long time on macOS, at least 5 years. It predates my working at the company. And that agent has been very good at allowing real-time alerting, automation, custom app deployment. But Apple has taken certain measures in the past few years to restrict what an agent is capable of doing. Apple has made it very clear that they would prefer that certain settings that are tied directly to the operating system be handled via MDM. And so there isn't always a good or valid way to do things like deploy system extensions or privacy preferences through just an agent-based path. And so in our 8.1 release, which was in April, we launched NinjaOne MDM for Mac OS. And so this gives you a combination of an Apple Silicon native agent, and we did go ahead and upgrade our Mac agent so that it no longer needs Rosetta. It does run natively on Apple M1 chips, or M chips, I'll say. And so that gives you the ability to deploy antivirus, custom applications, it gives you that real-time alerting. But again, Apple has been insistent that there's certain things like patching, for example, the privacy preferences and the system extensions, that they do not want to allow an agent to undertake those actions. Their preference is that you use an MDM to enforce those settings. And so what Apple has done is they've locked certain functionality to only really be feasible through the MDM APIs. And so the difference here is an agent that resides directly on the device versus the MDM APIs, where NinjaOne is actually routing a lot of the commands through Apple's pathways that they've put in place to allow you to manage the device. And so that allows you to manage the device configurations, OS updates, the functionality of the device. Now, there are strengths and weaknesses to both of these approaches. I think an agent approach is going to be really fast. It's going to be really quick. But obviously, the developer, Apple, has put some restrictions on what exactly you can do when you're interacting with the operating system. And that's where MDM comes in. It has a lot of power for delivering the device configurations that Apple really makes only possible through MDM, but it's not always really suited for real-time troubleshooting. A lot of MDM functionality, or I should say, a lot of troubleshooting functionality just isn't present in MDM. Live tooling, like a live terminal, the ability to do, you know, custom application deployment and custom automations on the device. The real-time response of what has occurred and knowing whether or not there was success or failure. That's not always what an MDM is ideal for. An MDM is ideal for delivering device configurations and configuring the device, but it's not always ideal for the real-time response that we often need when we're trying to troubleshoot an issue on the go. And so, the NinjaOne approach here, our belief is that we want you to have the best of both worlds. We want you to have the agent that gives you the real-time alerting, the real-time automation, the ability to know when something isn't right and then respond to it, to have the live tools available for troubleshooting, the ability to collect all this information and then display it at scale across your fleet of devices. It also would give you remote access through NinjaOne Remote, software patching, EDR deployment, backups, and a whole lot more that we'll talk about once we get to the demonstration portion. And then on the MDM side of it, this gives you the ability to deploy your operating system updates, to deploy the restrictions, which determine what the device is actually able to do, or I should say, what the user is able to do on the device, and then also deploy the system extensions and privacy preferences to streamline the deployment process. I'm sure many of you have seen that there's any number of permissions that a user might be prompted for in order to allow something like CrowdStrike or SentinelOne or any other number of tools or applications, and the user will need to go ahead and accept those manually. And so MDM allows you to sidestep many of those prompts to the end user and create a more frictionless experience for your users. And I already see a couple of questions here that I wanted to address. I see a question here. Is this working for iPads as well? And yes, it absolutely is working for iPads. Mobile device management, or MDM, is something that applies to many different devices. Now, NinjaOne is going to support macOS, which is our topic for today. We are also supporting iOS and iPadOS as well as Android. So all of those were supported as of our initial MDM launch last year in July of 2004, not 2004, 2024. That would have been really in advance. So we support all of these functionalities today. Now, two big ones that are missing from this slide. Of course, one would be Windows. We don't support Windows MDM. We, of course, do have a very robust Windows agent that allows you to do a lot of things on the device. So I think we are very, very feature compatible on the Windows agent front. And then one area where we really don't have any visibility today would be Chrome OS, Chromebooks. That is not something that we're able to bring into Ninja today. But if you are interested in that, please let us know. And on that note, we do have a poll question that we wanted to ask everybody. So we'll go ahead and pop that up right now. So basically, are you using an MDM to manage your macOS devices today? We would love to know if you have anything currently in the field for that today. And obviously, we're going to go ahead and dive into the demo here so you can actually see how this looks and feels. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of questions. Obviously, we do support iPads. That is Constantine's question. Michael had a question. What iOS does it support? I believe we support back to iOS 12, if I'm not mistaken. However, the NinjaOne Assist app that runs on iOS does only support a more recent version, I think iOS 16 or 17. Is there any plan to push certificates using SCEP to configure certificate protected Wi-Fi such as Cisco ISE? Yes, I think we do have capability of doing that today through custom payloads to push certificates to devices. So I'll try to remember to take a note of that, Brian, once we get into the demo. Can we use Ninja MDM on top of Intune's MDM? You cannot. So with MDMs, it's like Highlander, there can only be one. So you cannot be enrolled in multiple MDMs at a time. What I would say is you can push the NinjaOne Mac agent to a device and have the agent-based approach only in place while still using another MDM. So that's absolutely possible. And at that point, you would get the MDM capabilities through your other MDM, but you'd still have the agent in place for remote access and live troubleshooting and automations and data collection. Do we have to wipe and reload Macs to put it on MDM? I love this question because you don't. Some of you may know that iOS devices have a requirement in place where if you want them to be fully supervised, you have to factory reset them. And at that point, the user can sign back in with their iCloud and download their backup and get all their settings back. Which is obviously friction. There's a lot of friction there for that process. You're saying basically that person's device is probably going to be more or less non-functional for a day or two to make that transition. Now, the good news is there have been modifications made to MDM on the part of Apple that were announced last month at the Worldwide Developers Conference, and it makes it much easier for iOS and iPadOS devices to be moved across MDMs without the need to do that full reset. That is something we're likely going to see later this fall. Apple has to actually release that functionality. Now, for Macs, you don't need to do that at all. With Macs today, you can install and have a fully supervised device, and there's no need to fully wipe it. Absolutely not required. So that is not something that you're going to see with macOS. You do not need to do a full wipe. The process of transitioning MDMs on macOS is much simpler. And as I mentioned earlier, the process gets way, way easier, probably in September later this fall as iOS 26 is released. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and switch my share here, and we're going to go and dive into the actual demonstration portion for today. Keep those questions coming in the Q&A, by the way. So that was Matthew's question. Let me mark that as answered. So right here, we are seeing a device that is enrolled in NinjaOne MDM. And so I want to go ahead and talk about the process that I went through to actually bring this device into the environment. So first and foremost, I went to administration. We can go ahead and go into the apps section here, and then you'll see that we have NinjaOne MDM for Android and then NinjaOne MDM for Apple, which is what we're talking about today. This is where iOS, iPadOS, and your macOS integrations would be set up. If you're only using one ABM account, you can see right here, we can go ahead and set up the Apple Push Notification Service token, and we can integrate that. But if you're integrating with multiple ABM accounts, as an MSP, for example, you do have the ability to go ahead and add in as many as you need so that you can have all your various clients' ABM tenants under this one roof here. Now, at this point, we can go ahead and deploy manually. So the manual deployment is very easy. We would go to the plus sign in the top right, we'd go to the device, we'd go to computer, and then right here we can see we have our Mac. We can go ahead and select our organization, and you can see the distribution type down here at the very bottom, which is really important. You can see that the top two options are DMG and PKG. This is the agent only, those top two options. So if you install the DMG or the PKG, you're only getting the NinjaOne agent in place. You're not going to be enrolling the device in MDM. So if you're using Intune or another MDM today and switching away is just not feasible, but you need better real-time support, better real-time tooling, better automation capabilities, you can go ahead and install the NinjaOne agent, and you kind of get the best of both worlds from that perspective using two separate tools. Now, I am an inveterate company man here, so I do believe that NinjaOne MDM is going to give you a better experience. So right here, I can go ahead and generate the MDM enrollment profile. And so what this will do is I can install it manually on the device, and I will enroll the device in MDM, and the agent would automatically be installed as a part of that enrollment. As a part of that enrollment, we would have access to the device. I get that most of you are not going to do this manually. However, you might want to test it. And so I wanted to make sure that you saw how you could quickly get this enrolled and test the device, if you were evaluating NinjaOne MDM. And so my preferred preference here is you want to use both the MDM enrollment, you want to use the MDM enrollment profile that we see here, You want to enroll the device in MDM, and the device will automatically get the agent. And so your two situations that you have accessible to you is you can have macOS agent only on NinjaOne, or you can get both MDM and agent. Those are the two combinations that you can get. There is no MDM only. It's MDM plus agent or agent only. Those are your two options for managing devices in NinjaOne, macOS devices in NinjaOne. So right there, that's the manual process, but I get that most of you probably aren't going to do that. You need something that's going to be automated. And so here we have the automated device enrollment. You can set up a token from your ABM account. And so as devices are purchased, they are automatically enrolled in your Apple Business Manager account. They are then automatically, as they are provisioned, automatically enrolled in NinjaOne MDM. And then they would automatically receive the policy that would control a lot of the important settings that would matter to them for their day-to-day work life. And then you also have the option here to go ahead and add in a content token. So if there is something from the App Store that you would like to push, you absolutely can do that. So a couple different scenarios here. If you already are using an MDM or you are not using an MDM at all, but you are using Apple Business Manager. So scenario 2, let's say we have scenario 1, which was manual deployment. Let's say scenario 2 is you have unmanaged devices today, but they're in Apple Business Manager. They're just not managed by an MDM. You can go ahead and then use automated device enrollment to bring those devices into NinjaOne, and then you would have the ability to manage them here. You may need to run a command locally on the device in order to complete that enrollment. So if you enroll a device and assign it in Apple Business Manager, you still need to complete the process on the device in order to facilitate that enrollment. So let's take a look at this through the third scenario, which is you already have your devices managed in another MDM today. You're using Apple Business Manager and you want to transition from your other MDM into NinjaOne. What would that process look like? For starters, you would go ahead and you would make sure the device is in Apple Business Manager. You would go ahead and you would integrate NinjaOne. You would set up the automated device enrollment and you would point your devices to this new MDM server. You would then go into your old MDM. You can push the NinjaOne agent only, and that means that you're going to have remote access through a second tool that is not whatever tool you're currently using. And so at that point, you can go ahead and release the device through your old MDM. You can go ahead and use your NinjaOne agent there to install the MDM enrollment profile or otherwise push the command locally on the device that forces the device to re-register to the MDM server. And so that's what I mean when I say that there's no full erase required. I saw that there were a couple questions about this. Basically, all you need to do is make the change in Apple Business Manager and then go to the device, which we can do right now. Go to the device, open up a remote access session. And so in here, I would be able to go ahead and do everything that I need to do to run a terminal command. I think it's a one-line terminal command that opens up the MDM automated device enrollment box, and then you just complete the wizard locally here. So it is very fast, but there is a manual touch that is required here in order to complete that enrollment to force the device to re-recognize. That terminal command is in our documentation. I don't have it offhand, but I see people asking about that. That is in our documentation, and I think we do have a video there that actually shows the process. And if we don't, I'll try to get that online. But yeah, that is what the process would be. We could open up terminal here, paste the command in, it would open up a wizard, and we would just say, yes, we want to enroll in this MDM, and we'd be good to go. No erasing required. On macOS, you do not need to erase. That should not be something that you encounter at all. It should be pretty easy to switch between MDMs and get those devices where they need to be in terms of management. And you can see here, I'm in NinjaOne Remote. I have the ability to toggle between my displays if I had multiple ones. I have all the things that I typically would have access to up here for pasting keystrokes, pasting from my clipboard, for two-way chat, for file transfers, for remote printing. All that is still accessible here inside of this session. And if I did need to go ahead and modify something, you can see I can go into the system settings here. I can go ahead and find maybe my privacy settings right here. Yeah, do I want to allow applications access to the camera? All that stuff can be modified right here. In fact, if I wanted to go ahead and see my profiles that I have installed, right here, device management, I can actually come in and see, all the profiles that have been deployed here. And so everything that you see here, or a lot of what you see here in terms of the NinjaOne agent and remote settings, the CrowdStrike payloads that we see up here, this may otherwise be something that an end user has to manually accept when you push if you're not using an MDM. So if I was pushing CrowdStrike, but I didn't have an MDM in place to give me this soft landing that you see right here, the user is getting bothered with all these prompts that they need to go ahead and accept for CrowdStrike. With this, that all goes away. It really smooths the road there. It gives you that soft landing so that as you enroll the device, there are a lot more manageable prompts rather than there being kind of this avalanche and onslaught of everything that needs to be accepted. And it's almost certain that something is going to be missed. The one thing that you do need, or that the end user would need to manually accept here, is screen recording. So because NinjaOne Remote is an application, it does mean that you do need to whitelist the screen recording permission in order for you to actually be able to see what the end user sees. So that is something that the end user will have to do manually themselves. But everything else that we see here, this is something where you can use the system extensions and the privacy preferences to smooth that landing and ensure that there's as least amount of friction as possible with the end user. I see a question here. Do we need, I assume this ABM and Ninja MDM for macOS devices? I would strongly recommend Apple Business Manager. It makes your life a lot easier. It is free. There is a verification process that you do have to go through, and it requires a DUNS number to verify that you are a valid business. So just be aware that that is something that I would recommend. It's not wholly necessary, but it does make your life a lot easier to use Apple Business Manager to manage your macOS devices. And yes, you would need NinjaOne MDM licensing to have those devices fully managed with both the agent and MDM through our platform. And Daniel, I will try to find that terminal command and make sure that's included in the resources for today's recording. So keep an eye on the YouTube description when that gets emailed out sometime tomorrow. Ryan has a question about his devices still being on 8.0. Will they auto update to 9.0 in the future? Yes, they will. They will actually update sometime tonight, which is when the 9.0 release finally rolls out to North America. And Michael has a question. So the manual deployment requires Apple MDM still. So we install Apple MDM plus agent or agent plus the command you mentioned. For manual deployment, just install the MDM profile. This right here. So this is what I did to actually set this up. I went ahead and I downloaded my enrollment profile right here. I copied that link. I went into Safari. I pasted the enrollment profile. I had to go into system settings and install the enrollment profile. And at that point, everything else automatically happened. The agent was installed, and then all my policy settings were also automatically deployed. So Michael, hopefully that clears up the confusion there. The section where I installed the agent first, that was more so if you were transitioning from a different MDM already to ensure that you could have the NinjaOne agent in place for remote access so that you weren't at risk of not having access to the device. So a different process here, one for testing, installing manually on unmanaged devices, and then another process which would be for kind of broadly transitioning from another MDM provider into NinjaOne. That would be a little different. We would want to install the agent first to ensure that you had access to the machine. And if you have, again, more questions about that, please let me know. I want to try to be as clear about that as possible. And Jessica says about iPad iOS erasing to enroll, you can install MDM on a device without erasing it. However, that profile can be removed, which for a lot of people is not tenable. So you can install on an iPad or on an iPhone. However, that profile will be removed. That's known as unsupervised access. And so to get fully supervised access, which in the business world is what most people want, you do need to erase iPads and iPhones. Again, that does not apply to macOS. That is only applicable to iPads and iPhones. Angel says, is it possible to set the full disk access and other permissions for app installs from Ninja macOS MDM? Absolutely. You saw that we deployed the CrowdStrike preferences, and in a little bit, I'm going to go into the policy and show you how you can whitelist all of that. But that does include full disk access as well. Luke says, Luke Hobbs, great name. So just to clarify, the steps for transitioning from an existing MDM to NinjaOne MDM are push the your devices, change the MDM server in ABM, push the enrollment profile from Ninja, run a terminal command on each MacBook and Wizard. So you actually wouldn't push the enrollment profile from Ninja. When you assign the profile in ABM, that third step should really be you want to release the device from your old MDM, and then step four would be to run the terminal command on each MacBook and Wizard. And of course, I would highly recommend doing this in testing first, doing a 1 and 2 step before doing it broadly. But yeah, step 3, Luke, is the only thing there that I think would actually be you want to release the device from your old MDM. You do not actually push the enrollment profile from Ninja. ABM is pushing the enrollment profile when you change the MDM server, and running the terminal command is when the device goes, oh, I have a new MDM server, and re-enrolls. So again, hopefully that clarifies everything. Please keep the questions coming if I am being unclear, which is absolutely a possibility. Darius says, will screen recording require regular reauthorization in Sequoia? It likely will, because NinjaOne Remote is an application. So I do believe that's well, I'll be honest, I haven't personally seen it yet. I've been waiting to see it, and it hasn't actually happened for me. Uh, but yes, I do believe that we are going to be subject to that because NinjaOne Remote is a dedicated application. I know that there is a different pathway through MDM for remote access that doesn't use an application. It uses the remote management pathway from Apple, and so you can actually remote into the device without the need for regular reauthorization or even for approving screen recording and accessibility permissions locally. However, we already had the NinjaOne Remote application for many years prior to that becoming a reality. I think it was launched last year. And so if that's functionality that is necessary for you, kind of that alternative style of remote access, please submit feature requests for that. Obviously, because we already have remote access, we think that that's something we've got pretty well covered, but I'm hearing more and more that there's friction that's been added into changes into macOS like Sequoia that are causing this friction. And obviously, anybody who's had experience managing Macs over the years knows that Apple likes to change things up and make the lives of administrators more difficult. Um, and so that's a pretty clear consistency that probably things are going to change on macOS over the years, and we want to be responsive to that. So as the changes happen in macOS world and you need NinjaOne to change with it, please submit feature requests. So right here in the top right, the question mark, if we go down to the product roadmap, let us know, submit an idea right here to say, on my macOS devices, I need the ability to remote in without the screen recording permissions to be authorized or on a consistent basis. I made a hash of that, so I apologize. But that's the essential feature request that you would need here. Right now, we have very little visibility on this. I'm hearing more and more of it anecdotally. So if this is functionality that you need as macOS makes things a little bit more difficult for traditional pathways, please let us know. We need this data so that we can make a case to build it. So yes, please, please, please do that if that is key functionality for you. How do you prevent the end user from unenrolling if they were not with an MDM before? If you're enrolling through Apple Business Manager, you are able to make it so that they cannot unenroll. It's only when you are enrolling the device locally that they have the ability to remove the profile. If you are setting the profile through or setting the MDM server through Apple Business Manager, they should not be able to unenroll themselves. So those are kind of the two caveats with macOS. If you're doing the manual enrollment profile, the end user can remove it themselves. If you're deploying through Apple Business Manager, they cannot. That is a fully supervised device, and that management is locked in. Let's see. Rick says, for computers, is there an advantage to using MDM over the standard DMG? Absolutely. And I think that takes me into our next section here, which is going to be looking at the Mac OS policy. So if I go to administration and then into policies, we'll go down to the Windows policy right here. And so I think this outlines pretty well what you get with the agent and what you get with MDM. And so right here, we see conditions, we see compound conditions. This is everything we would want to alert on and then potentially respond to automatically. So for example, right here, low disk space, maybe I want to run some sort of shell script that clears out files. If we have a device that needs a reboot, maybe I want to go ahead and run a reboot automatically so that I don't have to deal with it myself. Compound conditions, same idea, taking multiple criteria into account. Scheduled automations, you can see here I'm updating the system performance check for the custom field right here every 3 hours. I'm syncing the time here every day at 8 o'clock to make sure the time is synced up. And then I have my device onboarding here to enable the firewall to find out what the operating system install date was, to change the power and sleep settings so it doesn't go to sleep, and then to write all of the browser extensions into a custom field. And so you can see here, everything is agent-based. The conditions, compound conditions, scheduled automations, the antivirus that we would deploy, either SentinelOne or CrowdStrike, the software patching that we have here, backing up using the file and folder backup or document backup, and then the warranty tracking. I'll note here, you do need to provide your own source of warranty data. We are not able to pull directly from Apple today. We can only pull from Microsoft, Dell, HP, Lenovo, and Toshiba automatically. But if you have your own source of warranty data, and it's a lot easier for administrators to retrieve that information from Apple than it is for a third party. You do have the ability to import that from the API to make sure that you have all this data in one spot. But for Apple devices, we're just not able to natively track the warranty because Apple has not given us that pathway. And so that right there, conditions, compound conditions, schedule automations, antivirus, software patching, backups, and warranty tracking, those are all through the agent. That is facilitated by the agent. Now, if we go down here, MDM, this is everything that you get with MDM. So the question was, what do I get with the agent versus MDM? This, I think, breaks it up really nicely. With MDM, we can set passcode restrictions. We can set other restrictions with device functionality. So for example, if I do not want them to use AirDrop, I just uncheck that, and they're no longer going to be able to use AirDrop as long as they're running macOS 10.13 or later. I can also deploy applications. I will note here that this is not from the public app store. This is from content tokens that you can set within Apple Business Manager. So if you are using applications in ABM, you can go ahead and assign them and then go ahead and push them out from this section here. I saw somebody earlier ask about setting up Wi-Fi profiles. You can do that right here, but I think this was specifically about certificates. And so if we go down here to custom payloads, this is likely where you're going to be able to push any custom certificates. I do believe if we go in here, I think we have examples of certificate payloads. So if we look at custom payloads here, if custom payload examples, I will drop this into the chat if I can find it. And I can't. There we go. And so I do believe we've got some certificate management down here as well. So hopefully that helps out whoever asked that question. I have forgotten. Now, right here, we have our privacy preferences. And so this is really important. This is where you would grant, for example, full disk access right there. When we're doing that for the CrowdStrike Falcon agent. And again, this is to eliminate that friction with the end user having to do this themselves. System extensions, very similar concept here. These are things that you only really have the ability to do manually on the device or to set via MDM. Now, the custom payloads I mentioned here earlier, oftentimes a vendor will give you a mobile config file. And so if you have a mobile config file, this is where we would go ahead and bring those bring those configurations into NinjaOne. And so often a mobile config file will set various privacy preferences and system extensions and then specific settings for the application. And so this is your route here, custom payloads and mobile config files. This is how you can deploy those to your devices. Some vendors give you instructions for setting privacy preferences. Some will give you one big mobile config file that does everything for you. So it really is going to depend on the vendor there. I've seen, just different instructions depending on who you talk to. So those are your two primary avenues for setting those up. And I see a question here from Eric. Will there be an import function for a mobile config file? Yep, you just go ahead and add in here and paste that. That would be our implementation of that today. Does NinjaOne MDM have the ability to grant screen recording permissions without user approval? No, I believe that is an Apple limitation. You have to have that approval. In the other methods that people are using for screen recording, for remote access, they're bypassing that entirely through Apple pathways. We don't support those yet. If that's a requirement for you, please let us know. We are a data-driven company, so we need the data coming from people saying that because of the changes Apple has made, we need to have this specific pathway to reduce friction with end users. So please let us know. Right now, we just don't have the volume of data on that to make that kind of push, development push. So please, as if that's necessary for you, if you need that friction eliminated, please submit a feature request like I showed earlier. Nick has a question. Will there eventually be a way to use a GUI to build those custom payloads? I'm not sure if we're going to be doing that natively. One thing I will say is that the iMazing profile editor is something that I have used and works very well and is free. So that would be my recommendation today for building your mobile config files or your custom payloads. Definitely look into the iMazing profile editor, and I'll make sure I put a link in that YouTube description for when the recording gets posted as well. How does NinjaOne handle Mac file vault recovery keys? So today we don't. The good news is that in our 10.0 release, which is probably going to be in August, September timeframe, we have full file vault management. So you will have a dedicated tab here, just like we can see for OS updates, for example, that will be for file vault. And you'll be able to go ahead and set those settings and be able to escrow the recovery key and have all that easily visible within the platform. So that is our next big release for macOS. That is the 10.0 release. Again, August, September timeframe. We stagger our rollouts globally, so that's kind of why it's kind of a wider timeframe there. And yes, you will have full file vault capabilities for macOS in the 10.0 release. See a couple questions there, so I'm glad I got to push that out there. And Brian says, under administration policies, there are MDM policies. Is that not used for macOS? You're 100% right. It is not used for macOS. And that comes down to the fact that we wanted to make this a seamless kind of experience for you. We didn't want you to have to go and manage two separate policies, one for MDM and one for macOS. And so all of your macOS settings, they just reside in one spot. And you can see here's a sub policy here for Sentinel-1 instead. And you can see I have, my system extensions for them instead. No, this doesn't look like it's saying the right thing. Greg says, can you push browser extensions automatically as well? I think that's something that you can push through a custom payload, but I don't believe that's something that we're going to have a native GUI for, at least in the near term. Does NinjaOne... Oh, sorry, wrong question. Alex asks, will a link to this video be sent out after? Yes, absolutely. Keep an eye on your email. Sometime tomorrow, you will get a link to the recording. Christopher says, is it possible to link Intune and NinjaOne MDM? No, you would want to use the NinjaOne agent, and then Intune would be the MDM. Again, with MDM, there's only one King of the Hill. You can't have multiple MDM a device enrolled in multiple MDMs. I got there eventually. You can't have a device enrolled in multiple MDMs. You can only have a device enrolled in one MDM. You could have the NinjaOne agent installed, and that would not conflict. But of course, company shill again, I'll say that I think you get a better experience having MDM and agent and under one umbrella in one portal. Marcel says, I thought the AV of choice was Bitdefender. We offer integrations with Bitdefender, Gravity Zone, with CrowdStrike, and with SentinelOne, so you get your choice of your particular flavor of EDR. Does NinjaOne work well with macOS binded to AD? Yes, I think we work very well in that scenario. I don't think that there's any conflicts there. Follow up from Luke. The last step of running the terminal command and going through the wizard means there isn't a way to do a touchless transition from an existing MDM to NinjaOne MDM. Yes, that is 100% correct. I absolutely wish it does, but because that command brings up that wizard, it means that you have to do about 15 to 20 seconds of manual intervention. So it's not a lot, but it is a touch, and I cannot wait for the new update. OS 26 should come out this fall. Again, this is an Apple update. This is not a Ninja thing. In that new update in the fall that Apple is releasing, OS 26 makes it much, much easier for iPads, iPhones, or iOS devices and Mac OS devices to transition MDMs. It gets way, way easier in the fall. In the interim here, there is a little bit of a process here, but Apple has, I think, recognized the friction here and they want to eliminate it as well. Question there. All right, let's go ahead and keep going here. One thing that we didn't talk about that I think is really, really important is patching. And I kind of saved this one for last because I think it's a great example of how we are fitting in kind of different technologies and trying to provide a homogeneous experience that seems the same for Windows devices, for Linux devices, for macOS devices, for iOS and Android devices. And so if we go down here, you'll see OS updates. And so this is how you can configure OS updates through MDM. Now, there is a different method, agent-based patching, that some of you may have used in the past. And I will be fully transparent here that Apple doesn't like agent-based patching, and they make it really difficult. And so for me, the setup for strictly agent-based patching is prohibitive. The time investment to do it is prohibitive. There's a lot of manual intervention to get it working. And so I'm not going to talk about agent-based patching today. I'm only going to talk about MDM-based patching because I think that's going to be a lot more successful and easier for you long term. So what we would do if we wanted to control our updates, we can delay when new updates are installed. Apple restricts this delay to 90 days. So 90 days is the max that we can delay a major new upgrade. And so this would be Catalina to Sequoia, for example. Right here, we can delay when a minor update is installed. And so that would be .1, .2, .3. And so again, a max of 90 days. We can also delay when new non-OS software updates can be installed. Again, we can delay that to 90 days. Can they install beta versions? I think probably not, but hey, I want them to be able to install rapid security responses, but don't want them to be able to remove those. Do I want standard accounts to be able to install OS updates, or do I want to enforce that through MDM? And then do I want to have notifications down here as well? And so how do I want these to be automatically downloaded? I have all those options right there. So let's close out. And let's go into actually a different tab right here. And so this is a MDM enrolled device. We can see it right here. And if we go down, we get all of our alerts. We can see that File Vault is disabled. We have that little alert right there to let us know. But then we actually get the patches right here. And so this is where I can go ahead and approve a patch. Now, 14.7, that's older. I probably want something newer. So, hey, right here, 15.5, that looks like the newest version. I can go ahead and approve that. And when I approve it, I get the option here to set an enforcement deadline. So when do you have to have this installed? And so maybe I'll say on the 23rd at 9 a.m., you have to go ahead and be on this particular version Otherwise we enforce it. You have to be upgraded. I'm not going to do that because I want, for demonstration purposes, everybody to be able to see all these patches and see what NinjaOne is able to do. So I want to prove that there. However, if I go back in here and go to the very top, you'll see that I can go into my patching section here. I can go into pending. And so right here, my iOS patches, my macOS patches, my Windows patches. I think under the approved section, I've got my Linux patches. You can see here, everything's under one umbrella. So you're approving your Windows patches, Linux patches, macOS patches. You have that visibility across your entire fleet from one portal. Now you can also automate with everything else that you have in the NinjaOne platform. So when we go to our devices menu here, if we're looking to push certain applications, I can find all of my Mac laptops that are missing a certain piece of software. And so I can say, well, if I do not contain any version of a particular software, and I'll use Google Chrome as an easy example here. You can see here, neither of them have Google Chrome. And so what I can actually do is say that this is Mac OS devices without Chrome. I can go ahead and save that. Now, under the administration section, I have the ability to go ahead and upload my installers, and this works for both Windows as well as Mac. So if I have a PKG or a DMG that I want to push out to my devices, I just need to upload that Google Chrome installer right here. And then once I do that, I can go into tasks and I can go ahead and create a new task. And so I might have this run every hour. I would add in my automation to install Google Chrome. And then under targets, this is where I can select my group. And so earlier I created that group of macOS devices without Google Chrome. I could target an organization, I could target a device, but those are both static selections. To really make this automated, I want to use the group option, which is dynamic. We're targeting the search parameters rather than the specific device or specific company. So what I can do here is say, well, my macOS devices without Google Chrome, any of those devices that appear in here, you need to install Google Chrome on them. And so NinjaOne is doing the heavy lifting here of identifying which devices need to install Google Chrome based on the fact that it's missing. And so this functionality would apply across Windows devices, across Linux devices, across macOS devices. You don't even actually need to create separate tasks for different operating systems. You can actually go ahead and run, let's say we're rebooting something. Well, I want to reboot my Linux device. I want to reboot my Mac device. We'll go ahead and add in the reboot here. And then I want to add in my Windows reboot. And so right there, I could go ahead and target all three types of operating systems with one task, and it's only going to run the appropriate automation because you can't run a Linux automation on Windows or vice versa. Jeremy says, is Ninja already supporting iOS 26? We have several already deployed for our developers. I believe it runs. I think there are some certain changes that we're going to make as OS 26 becomes publicly available to make it a little easier. There's specifically something we need to incorporate to make the transition across MDM servers easier on Mac OS specifically. But iOS 26 should work with NinjaOne MDM today. Eric says, do you think we would ever see a user management portion for the MDMs? I think that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, would definitely recommend a feature request for that just to make sure that we have the visibility and know that people are interested in that feature. Rhett has a great question. Has many devices that are unmanaged or only have ADIGI without the full ADE enrollment and customers that do not have ABM. Would these devices require a wipe using Apple Configurator to transition to full MDM enrollment in Ninja? No, absolutely not for Mac OS devices. You should not have to do any wipe. You should not even have to use Apple Configurator. It's just a minimal amount of manual effort to actually run the terminal command to say, hey, you have an MDM enrollment profile. You need to recognize this. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if they're unmanaged, you don't even need to do that. It's just enrolling the MDM profile on the device. I can tell you that takes 20, 30 seconds. It is incredibly easy. I keep doing it. So I have had to do it a lot over the past couple weeks. Michael has a question about custom application deployment. Michael, I would strongly recommend that you reach out to your account manager. We have a case-by-case method for handling that. So please reach out to your account manager and tell them that you need that file size increased. Can we remote control an iPad or iPhone if necessary to provide tech support? My understanding is that is not possible today. Apple simply does not really allow control of the device. They only allow you to view it. We have brought out control for Android, but unfortunately, my understanding, and again, I could be wrong, but last I heard from our Apple expert, Paul Evans, that is just not something that Apple really allows you to do. So no control. It is view only for an iPad or an iPhone. You can absolutely control on macOS. In fact, I think you guys saw me do it earlier. How does setting Wi-Fi credentials work from a policy perspective? One setting for all clients. No, you can absolutely create additional policies uh, that branch. And so you can see here, we can create a policy for CrowdStrike, a policy for SentinelOne. Same concept of creating policy for different clients and then building your Wi-Fi settings in there. So yeah, absolutely something that you can do today. Yeah, and Marcel brings up a good point here. A few seconds in terms of a transition doesn't take into account that you have to schedule a meeting with the clients and coordinate all of this. I fully appreciate here that it's very easy for the words just to roll off the tongue for me. Uh, but yes, that is absolutely a good point to bring up here. For MSPs, you do need to go ahead and schedule time with your clients, schedule time for this to occur. One thing that I think is personally very useful is you could set up times after hours so that users aren't impacted. And I love using this display pop-up script that we have for macOS right here to actually notify them and remind them, hey, you need to leave your device on because we're going to be doing an upgrade or a transition later today. But absolutely, you do want to have those conversations and the coordination with your clients as an MSP. That probably is almost certainly going to take longer and involve more effort than the actual process of moving devices, depending obviously on how many people you have and how many devices you're managing. So yes, I don't want to make it seem like I'm trivializing that. I just want to make note here that the effort here is relatively minimal in terms of the direct action. The coordination, of course, is going to really be kind of where I think the bulk of the effort is. Yeah, and Aaron brings up a good point in the chat, which I mostly didn't look at, but I made it about 55 minutes in, and now I'm getting distracted. I think there are some new iOS remote control features in OS 26, but that's not something that I think we're working on imminently. Um, Yeah, and I see somebody say FaceTime allows remote control of iOS with user cooperation, so that is a great workaround as well. Let me see. Let's go do a speed round here. I have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and try to look at the most upvoted questions. Neil says, "How long before we ditch his current tool and use Ninja exclusively?" I think that depending on your needs today, I think that we can meet a lot of them. I have a feeling that for many people, really the 10.0 release with the addition of File Vault is going to be critical for that. And I think that the transition, the ability to more easily transition from MDM providers um, is also going to be a big benefit as well. So I think for file vault purposes, if that's a key thing that you are using today, that is kind of the one thing that I think may give you pause until our 10.0 release in September. But really, I think that, I'm incredibly impressed at how well this tool works for being so relatively new in terms of just the MDM functionality, because that came out in April. So yeah, I think we're well on our way, Neil. What are the pros and cons of doing per client ABM accounts versus a singular MSP ABM account? Unfortunately, Nathan, I think having a singular MSP ABM account might violate the terms and conditions from Apple. They generally want each individual entity to have their own ABM, and then they want the MDM provider to allow you to integrate multiple tokens from multiple ABM accounts. My understanding was that Apple kind of frowned on the concept of having all an MSP's devices or having an MSP ABM account collect all of their individual clients' devices. I'm not a lawyer or working for Apple, so I don't really know, but that's kind of my understanding, Nathan, is that the recommended way from Apple is to have per client ABM accounts, and that one giant MSP ABM account is generally frowned on by Apple. We have about 15 Macs with Ninja agents in a primarily Windows environment. To take advantage of the new MDM features, do we need to reinstall something, or would the agent be seamlessly updated? If you want to take advantage of the new MDM stuff, you will need to enroll those devices in ABM. Again, that process for 15 Macs, I probably would just do it manually. I would come in here, I would generate my MDM enrollment profile for my organization. I would copy that link. And then again, the process is very easy to deploy on the actual device. It's the coordination and the scheduling that is going to probably, be the most onerous. Can we re-enroll, or sorry, can we enroll already existing Apple devices in NinjaOne into NinjaOne if we don't have it enabled? Yes. Yes, you can. So if you already have a device that has the agent installed, all you need to do is go ahead and use this MDM enrollment profile and deploy it manually, or you can use Apple Business Manager to deploy at scale. But if you already have the NinjaOne agent in place, that's not going to conflict with adding the MDM capabilities on top of that. Um, hmm. Eric has a great thing that I wish I could demonstrate, and I tried to get it set up. I said, can you show us an example of pushing this out to a device that is already in Ninja with the agent and adding it to MDM by pushing out a script or something? And I actually don't think that I have any non-MDM enrolled devices that I can show that on right now, but that's a great point. I'll try to put together a video of that, and maybe I'll include that video in the YouTube description. I can't guarantee that one. That one might get posted next week. But I will go ahead and record a video of that because I think it's impactful to kind of see how everything happens so quickly. All right, we are at 1 minute until this webinar is over. So let me look and see who our big winner for today is. JP always loves giving me names that I'm going to have problems pronouncing, which is most names, let's be fair. Could I get some drum emojis in the chat for our big winner today? Our big winner is David Bachelder. David Bachelder. I almost certainly mispronounced that, and you have my apologies. To make up for it, JP will be reaching out with what I assume is some sort of awesome prize. So be on the lookout for that. With that, I know we had a lot of questions and I was not able to get to all of them. Please feel free to reach out to me directly, jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. If anything I said here isn't tracking, it's entirely possible I could have said something incorrect. So please reach out if you have questions that need answering, if you're experiencing any difficulties. We want to make sure this works great for you. So I hope everyone enjoyed the session today. Again, be on the lookout for the recording email. And I hope everyone has a very good rest of your day. Take care.